Did you ever consider just how close we all live to being totally overwhelmed with trouble? To having our world instantly turned upside down, topsy-turvy? A single diagnosis from the doctor. A second of inattention behind the wheel. An unexpected announcement from your spouse who you thought was faithful. A knock at the door from a highway patrolman. A sudden violent change in the weather. And your life is falling apart. One day you're fine, next day you're suicidal. And it can happen so fast. Like here in our text today, Acts chapter 12. We're going to look at the first 11 verses, but look with me right now just at the first 4 and a little bit of verse 5. It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. When he saw that this met with approval among the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the festival of unleavened bread. After arresting him, that is Peter, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover, so Peter was kept in prison. This was a bad day for the early church. Things were going to pieces. And here's what I want you to be sure and catch today. When everything goes to pieces, everyone has a part. When everything goes to pieces, everyone has a part. You say, yeah, I know what you think. I know what you mean. Yeah, a lot of people contributed to this mess that I'm in, and I'm mad at every one of them for it. Now, that's not exactly what I mean when I say that everyone has a part. Though there may be a number that have contributed to your disaster, among that number, including you yourself, you and I, we need to see a bigger picture than that. So today, as we look at this picture here in the 12th chapter of the book of Acts, and if you happen to be new with us today, we're working our way through the book of Acts. And last week, Clay preached from Acts 11, and so today's message will be a portion of Acts 12. But as we look at this today, I want you to divide the picture that we see in these 11 verses. I want you to divide the picture 4 ways. Everyone has a part. For instance, the enemy has a part. The enemy attacks. That's the enemy's part. The enemy attacks. Now, the visible enemy here is King Herod. This is one of a number of King Herods. This one is King Agrippa the First. He's the grandson of Herod the Great. Herod the Great's the one that killed all the Bethlehem babies. This man's sister, Agrippa's sister, was Herodias, who asked for the head of John the Baptist on a silver platter. This man, Herod Agrippa, he was partly Jewish, and so he was given most of Palestine by Caligula, one of the Caesars. He was given most of Palestine to rule. Well, if he's partly Jewish, why would he do what he's doing here? Well, he decided to persecute the Christians in order to please the Jewish leaders, some of the Jewish leaders. And he also did it not only to please some of the Jewish leaders, but he wanted to please Rome because they had assigned him this governorship. He even let him use the name king. So what he's doing here, what Herod is doing is a very calculated, politically motivated move. Verse 3, which we just read, shows that Herod chose a time, an opportune time when he knew there would be the most Jews in one place. He chose the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. He chose the Passover time. He knew they'd all be, or many of them, the greatest number would be in Jerusalem so that he'd have the greatest impact on the Jews, especially the Jews that were anti-Christian. So he arrests Peter. We don't know what charge, some trumped up charge, just like they did with Jesus. And he put a heavy guard around Peter. Notice we basically got 16 soldiers in charge of Peter. Now, I don't think they were necessarily all there at once at the same time, but a rotation here, four squads, so 16 soldiers. This was a bad day. This is a bad day for Peter and the church. The church is under attack by Herod, but of course, Herod's being influenced, isn't he? Listen to this verse out of Revelation chapter 12. Then the dragon. Now, sometimes we don't know who in the world the book of Revelation is talking about, but we know here. Who's the dragon? Satan. Satan. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman. We're pretty sure the woman here is the church. And he went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring. Those who keep God's commands and hold fast their testimony about Jesus. Now, there's enemy number one right there, who has a great influence on Herod and many, many others. It's called a dragon here. Sometime I want to preach a sermon because of a sermon I heard, because of some reading I've done about how the devil, that old serpent from the beginning, he was looking for the seed of woman, because he was told early on that the seed of woman was going to come and was going to do what? Crush his head. So he starts looking right away. And all throughout the Old Testament, you see him thinking, there it is, it's Moses. It's Moses. So then he influences Pharaoh to have all the babies killed. Just like later on, it's a baby somewhere in Bethlehem. So he influences that Herod, the grandson of this one, to have the babies killed. He's always after the seed. But when the seed comes, and he doesn't recognize it for a while, I don't think. God has the baby hidden down there in Egypt, remember? During that time. And all. When finally he realizes who the seed is, and Jesus is killed, he thinks, yes, finally, I have found the seed, and the seed will not crush my head. And you remember we talked about on April Fool's, oops. Because Jesus comes back. So he is the enraged dragon. He can no longer get to the seed of woman. So what's he going to do now? Well, we just read it. He's going after the bride of Christ, us. He goes after the church, to persecute the church. And that's exactly what we see beginning to happen here in the book of Acts. The church is pretty much enjoying the favor of all, but that doesn't last for very long until we get to stuff like we're reading about here. Satan's agenda is to attack. Is he then the source of every single tragedy? No. But he's always around the edges. He's always around the edges of every upset in your life. And he is hoping and doing everything that he can, that regardless of the source, Whether the tragedy is something you did to yourself, or that the world did to you, or other people, that betrayed you, or on and on we go. It doesn't matter. Whatever the source is, that doesn't matter to him. He wants to make sure that the world of darkness is influencing your response. He's right there. The enemy always attacks. Now, everyone experiences pain. I remember a lady in the church that I preached at there in Eugene. I remember her saying, "My pain is the difference between what is actually happening and what I wish were happening. It's between reality and what I wish was happening." We all experience pain. Remember that when life falls apart, whether he caused it or not, the enemy's part is to attack. To either cause your pain, increase your pain, or at least applaud your pain and encourage any kind of sinful response that he possibly can. So when everything goes to pieces, everyone has a part, and let's not forget, the enemy has a part. And his part, as we see here in this picture, is the enemy attacks. Okay, what does the church do? Well, let's go back to the story. We stopped in verse 5. It says, "So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him." The enemy attacks, the church prays. Everyone has a part. What's the church's part? Prayer. Prayer must be, CCY, prayer must be our first and our primary response. What does that verse say? Peter was kept in prison, but the church held a press conference. No. But the church staged a sit-in at the jail. Peter was kept in prison, but the church said, "We're going to court over this." And they hired the best lawyer they could find. Peter was kept in prison, so the church sent Peter a care package. Peter was kept in prison, so the church held a Bible study. And on we can go. Now, nearly every one of those items that I named might even be legitimate and very possible eventual responses. But what was their first response? What is their primary response, and what must be ours? Prayer. One day it just occurred to me, and so you always hear me say this, prayer is never wrong. It's never wrong. God never says, "Do not pray about this. I don't want to talk to you about this. I don't want, and I especially don't want you to talk to me." Prayer, when the shepherds get together, is first on our agenda. We have a prayer list. We just go around the table praying about one at a time until eventually they're all covered. So I would say that we pray, normally if things start at 6, prayer ends somewhere around 6:30, 6:40, somewhere in there. And almost always this occurs to me. We've done the right thing, even if everything else we do in the rest of this meeting is wrong. It's not the decisions that is most important. It's prayer. And so it is with the church. Prayer, it's number one priority. He was kayaking off the Isle of Wight, which is in England, when Mark Ashton Smith, a 33-year-old at the time lecturer at Cambridge, capsized in treacherous waters. Clinging to his raft, his overturned raft, he reached for his cell phone. And his very first inclination he followed, he called Dad. He called his father. Now, Dad was training British troops at the time in Dubai, 3,500 miles away. But, nevertheless, without delay, Mark's father relayed his son's mayday to the Coast Guard installation that was nearest to his son, which happened to be less than a mile away. So within 12 minutes from the time he called, they were there with a helicopter to retrieve him from the water. Now, you don't have to be a preacher to make the application on this one. When we are in peril, our first impulse should be talk to the Father. Call the Father. If you're in trouble and you're so overwhelmed at the moment with your troubles that it's all you can do to just hang on, like Mark, let us pray for you. That's what the church is all about. Let us talk to the Father for you. When everything goes wrong, when everything goes to pieces, everyone has a part. The enemy attacks. The church prays. All right, what does the victim do? Because all of us are sitting here today in our own little mess, our own situation, feeling like a victim of something. What's the victim do? The victim sleeps. What? Can you believe this? The night before, verse 6, the night before Herod was to bring him to trial, so it's the very night before, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains and sentries. They stood guard at the entrance. I mean, he's not, banging on his bars with his metal cup, demanding to see the warden so that his living conditions can be upgraded. He's not demanding his right to a free phone call. He's sleeping. He's sleeping. The night before the immediate trial, he's sleeping. Certainly not in the most comfortable conditions either. For sleeping, I mean. He's between two soldiers. He's bound with two chains. But there he is, snoring Simon. One of the first things that life's traumas does to us is it robs us of sleep, which only compounds the problem, because sleep is ordained by God to replenish our reserves so that we can face life. Remember the old show Hollywood Squares? Peter Marshall, would ask the questions. So he asked this question to Don Knotts. Well, he asked the whole team, but it's directed always to one of them. He asked Don Knotts, you've been having trouble going to sleep. Are you a man or a woman? Don Knotts answered, that's what's keeping me awake at night. You see, sleep requires relaxation, and some of us are too frantic to relax. And we're all shaking our heads because we've all experienced this maybe as early as last night. The man's wife was going into labor, so he dialed 911 in a panic. The dispatcher came on and he said, my wife's having a baby and her contractions are only 2 minutes apart. What am I supposed to do? The dispatcher said, calm down, sir. Now, is this her first child? No, he replied frantically. This is her husband. Is this you? Is this me? We're frantic in a panic, giving crazy answers. Those around us are saying, calm down, calm down. And you even say it to yourself, but the tension just seems to mount. And you think, how can I sleep? I need to be using my energies to solve this problem, not sleep. Let me give you a couple suggestions. Remember that number one, sleeping restores your energy so that you can live with the tension. Sleeping restores your energy so that you can live with this tension. It's one of the best things that you can do when you're under attack. Number two suggestion, the church is praying while you sleep. If you've shared your burden with others, then let them stay awake at night instead of you, praying for your need and your concern. Let them help you carry it. Something happens while you sleep. You know what happens while you sleep? The Lord works. That's his part. The Lord works. It's right here in the passage. I didn't make that up. Verse 7, suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. Quick, get up, he said. And the chains fell off Peter's wrists. And then the angel said to him, put on your clothes and sandals. And Peter did so. Wrap your cloak around you and follow me, the angel told him. I mean, obviously Peter's sleeping, so he's groggy. And the angel has to say to him, get dressed. I don't do miracles. I don't do rescues of people in their underwear. Get your clothes on. And then he has to even tell him how to do that. You know, put on your clothes, pants first, then your shirt. Put on your shoes. Don't forget your coat. Get your cloak and wrap it around you. Verse 9, Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea that what the angel was doing was really happening. He thought he was seeing a vision. Now before, what we had here was snoring Simon. Now we have somnambulating Simon. We have sleepwalking Simon. Verse 10, they passed the first and second guards, and they came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself. I can hear the creaking. It opened for them by itself, and they went through it. And when they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angels left him. So in verse 10, they go right by the guards. Were the guards asleep? I like to, make my own story here. I like to believe that they were frozen in time. That God just stopped everything for a nanosecond and slipped in to do his work. And then he turned the time switch back on. And we read there in verse 11, then Peter came to himself and said, now I know without a doubt that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches and from everything the Jewish people were hoping would happen. They walk a block, the angel disappears, Peter's left standing there on the street corner. He comes to himself and he realizes, God has been at work. Have you come to yourself yet? Have you recognized yet that the Lord is working? He is doing his part. I mean, if any one of these four does his part, it's the Lord. He might not be working the way you or I prescribed, but the fact is, he never sleeps. He never slumbers. That's out of the Psalms, the 121st Psalm. He will not, verse 3, he will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. He didn't tell you and I that we couldn't sleep. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. I do not know how the moon can harm us. Maybe this is just poetic, but that's what he says. He's mostly saying it doesn't matter what time of the day it is. He's there, watching over us. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. Now, I can't tell you what he's planning. You can't tell me probably. He might be planning a major miracle, like he did in Peter's case. He might be planning a heavenly homecoming for you. Like he did, by the way, for James. Did you catch that? Peter is rescued, but one of his buddies, one of the apostles, James, in verse 2, put to death with the sword. He's the first apostle to go. James is the first one to be martyred. Who was his brother? John, as it says here. And maybe Luke put that there because John was still alive when Luke wrote. See, John was the last to die. The two brothers, the sons of Zebedee, sons of thunder. So in this story, we have God giving Peter a rescue here on earth, but we have James receiving a heavenly homecoming. Yesterday, I took the boys fishing. Cooper and his brother Tyler, and they were catching lots of bluegill. So they were having a ball. I was trying to catch a big bass, and I wasn't having so much fun. Actually, I was having a ball because they were. They were all excited about catching those bluegill. They counted. They got home. Gam, we got 17 bluegill. The little one got more than the older one. But Tyler, he's kind of, he's a thinker and a talker. He says what he's thinking, just the opposite of his brother. He's fishing, and he says, "Hey, Craps." I said, "Yeah?" Just in case you're new here, Craps is short for Crapaw, because he couldn't say Grandpa. So, I always like what Joe Q said, you don't choose your names as a grandparent. He said, "Craps, I kind of got this down, I said, "Yeah, you do. You're putting your own worms on, you're casting, you're, even taking the fish off, putting back." When I have a son, he said, "I'm going to teach him how to fish." He said, "You'll probably be gone, but I'm going to teach him how to fish." I said, "Wait a minute. Where am I going?" "Well, you could be in heaven," he said. He didn't say you're going to die. He said, "You could be in heaven." And then his brother, whom he calls Beast, Cooper, said, "Well, if Craps is in heaven, he's going to really be in a great place." I was so glad to hear him say that, I mean, it's great to take them fishing, but it's so good to hear them, working through that stuff, because though James dies here, and there's just that one short sentence about it, he's now in victory forever. Peter's got a lot more to go through still. When everything goes to pieces, everyone has a part. The enemy attacks. The church prays. The victim sleeps. I love that. The Lord works. Has your world recently come crashing down on top of you? Don't spend too much time raging at the devil. It's what he does. He does what he does. Do go to your friends in the church and ask for prayer. get some sleep, and be assured that the Lord is at work. Let's stand together. As we sing together and just offer a time of taking the Word, letting it do its job. The seed's been scattered through the Word, through song, through the worship. Let it do its job. And as we do that, if you need to make a decision for Christ, you want to stand up for Christ in some way, and you want to share that's fine. If you want to make that public, you can come. Certainly to receive Him as Lord. Let's see, is it... it's the Browns, isn't it? It's Winston and Barb that are back there. There they are. And there they are in the back. If you want prayer, just go back and look at them. They'll pray with you. They'll keep confidences. You say, I don't want to tell anybody. You tell them. You just have told them. If you say, no, it's okay to tell the church because I want the church to pray, they'll make sure the word gets to us. But you're welcome to do that while we sing. Just make your way to the back. But let's make sure we allow, especially the Lord, to do His part, okay? To do His work. Let's sing together.